Welcome to this week's edition of Dolphin Radio. And now, here's your hosts, Brad Michaels and John Bach. All right, welcome to Dolphin Radio. I'm Brad Michaels. We're without John again this week. Chris might be calling in a little while, but this is December 29th, Wednesday after that big Monday night football game. The Dolphins, first team in NFL history to have a 7-game losing streak and a 7-game win streak in the same season. This is, it's actually been quite incredible to watch this. We were all, at the beginning of the season, I knew that the Patriots game, of course, we won that game. It was the opener. But I knew that the team was a little sluggish that day, but that's kind of the norm. A lot of times at the beginning of the season, especially the first couple of games, is you kind of start out a little slow. Some teams, we've had teams in the past that started out 1-2, 1-3, things like that, and then they get on a little bit of a roll as they get a little bit more of the jitters, and they kind of gel a little bit more, and they get some of the things worked out, and they get a little bit more into a flow of the game, and they get a little bit better as the season goes on. What happened with us? We knew there were problems coming out of the Patriots game. The Patriots were actually, they were in good shape actually heading down there. It looked like they were going to take the go-ahead score and win that game. And Xavier Howard saved the day and forced that fumble. So the Dolphins were able to preserve that win. But then we go on that 7-game losing streak. And, folks, I'm telling you, at the beginning of that, we lose to Buffalo 35-0 at home in the home opener. And as bad as that was, it was the worst Dolphin home opening loss in the history of the team. And as bad as that was, it was still one of those games where you're just like, you can kind of chalk it up to, okay, it was just a bad day. Nothing bounced right for us. We weren't prepared. All teams in the National Football League have those types of games. Week 3 against the Raiders out here in Las Vegas, that was the game that we should have had. We had our foot on their throats. We were up 14-0. And you've heard me say it many times right here on the show. That play that led to the safety, why are you throwing a screen pass when you're backed up in your own end zone? That was a stupid call. And to be honest with you, Jacoby Brissett should have waved off the coaching staff in that particular situation. I would have. And he shouldn't have thrown that pass. It took too long for that play to develop. It was a screen pass. You're throwing it 1 yard deep into the end zone. And, of course, we all know what happened there. It was a safety, and that swung the momentum over to the Raiders. And, of course, the Raiders ended up coming back, taking a big lead. Dolphins had to play late, come from behind. They tied it with a 2-point conversion, only to then lose it in overtime. And there's a questionable call in overtime or a non-call where – I believe that the Dolphins should have been the benefactors of a defensive pass interference call on the Raiders. It was not called. It would have led to a first and goal situation in overtime, and we probably could have won that game. Instead, we settled for a field goal. We ended up losing that game. So, and then from there, it went downhill a little bit more. The Colts game, we started out great in the first quarter. And the next thing we knew, and this happened during the Colts game, it happened in the Atlanta game, in the Jacksonville game, it happened in the Tampa game. You just sat there as a Dolphins fan. You just sat there with your eyes wide open and your mouth in the, wow, I can't believe this is happening, and your hands on your head, because this wasn't the team that we expected to see the first 8 weeks of the season, is starting out 1-7. With a 7-game losing streak. Now, we got back onto the winning track with the game against Houston. That was the first of the 7, culminating in Monday night's victory 20-3 over the New Orleans Saints. Now, a lot of people are downplaying the importance, number one, of the Dolphins' 7-game win streak, saying that we really didn't play anybody. The only quarterback that we faced that was a good quarterback was Lamar Jackson. Well, we shut Lamar Jackson down. Brian Flores took over the play calling in the Baltimore game, from what I understand. I believe he's still basically in charge of that defensive play calling. The defense was having problems the first half of the year. And in the second half of the year now, they've really turned it on, and they're doing a lot better. So the Dolphins now have their record at 8 wins and 7 losses, rounded off 7 in a row. And they're setting records, by the way, in doing this. You got Jalen Waddle just tied a Monday Night Football record. He tied the great Jerry Rice for the most receptions on Monday night with 10. The defense had 8 sacks in the Monday night game, and I'm trying to remember the actual statistics. I can't remember, and I tried to look it up before the show, but busy with other stuff, and hopefully you guys understand that. It's either 33 or 36 sacks, something like that, in the past 3 games, I believe. It's just, or in the last 6 games, I'm sorry. But it's incredible. I mean, you had 8 just the other night. Emmanuel Ogbah, he had 2. One of them was just an absolute flattening of Ian Book. But we rattled Ian Book's cage a lot more than just the 8 sacks. He was hurried a lot, pressured a lot, pretty much running for his life all night long. And so it was a very good defensive effort. It was funny because I was joking around with Chris just last week on the phone. I said, when he told me that Ian Book was going to get the start for the Saints, I said, okay, and his first pass will be a pick 6. Well, it wasn't his first pass, but it was his second pass, was the pick 6 to Nick Needham. That set the stage, I think, for the Dolphins all night long. And coming back to what I started with about people kind of downplaying the importance of the Dolphins' 7-game win streak, and not downplaying the importance, but just downplaying the fact that we've done it. Oh, you didn't play anybody. Oh, you didn't play any starting quarterbacks. Oh, you didn't. Well, Lamar Jackson, Cam Newton, who maybe's lost a little bit of a step, but at one time he was an MVP in this league. And others that we've faced. Zach Wilson's not going to be a slouch, I don't think. I think he's going to be a very good quarterback. So we've faced some competition. And you're talking about the National Football League. It's not easy to win, period, in the National Football League, much less win 7 games in a row. By the way, talking about the 7-game win streak, I forget exactly how many times it had been done. I believe it's been done 8 times that the Dolphins have won 7 games in a row in a season. It is once now by Brian Flores, obviously. The other 7 times that it happened were under Don Shula. Now, not going to say that I'm putting Flores up there on the same level with Coach Shula, but it's an interesting fact that the only other times the Dolphins have been able to win that many games in a row or more was under Coach Shula. Now, we can probably put Brian Flores into Shula's company, maybe. If we continue the winning, we win out, which is 9 games in a row to get to 10-7. We're in the playoffs, and if we take another 4 games at that point and win the Super Bowl, they're not just going to name a highway after Brian Flores. They'll probably change that. They'll probably change the name of the city to, instead of Miami, it'll be the city of Flores. So, but that's probably not going to happen. I've seen a lot of interesting things that have come out since the Dolphins won the other night. There are some people out there that are taking them very seriously. Like I've said, it's not easy to win a football game in the National Football League. It's not easy to win 2 or 3 in a row, much less to go on a 7-game win streak. But you've seen this time and time again. The Kansas City Chiefs, they did this. They went on a roll when they won their Super Bowl back a couple of years ago. Same thing with Tampa Bay last year. Tampa Bay, they just went on a roll last year and started winning, never looked back. And they win a Super Bowl. Now, I'm not saying that the Dolphins are going to run the table, because obviously to run the table and win a Super Bowl, the Dolphins would win 13 games in a row. This isn't 1972. 1972, as tough as it was, because we're the only team that's ever done it, may have been a little easier in 72 with that team. That was a much better team, I'm for sure of, than this 2021 unit. But when you look at this 2021 unit, the only thing that really I think is the weak spot in this team is the offense. And I think that the offensive weak spot starts in the running back field and the offensive line. But it all starts up front, because you've heard me and John talk about this before. Everything in the National Football League, everything in the game of football, period, whether it's in the Pee Wee level all the way up to the NFL level, everything in football starts up front. So that's starting, it's starting up front with your offensive line. It's starting with your defensive line. Those are the guys that set the stage, because if you could win the line of scrimmage, you're going to win a lot of battles out there on the football field. So the offensive line, they've started playing better. That obviously helps that we've got Michael Dieter back there at center. It helps that Liam Eichenberg is settling in at left tackle. He plays that position a lot better than Austin Jackson, who is a natural left tackle, has been a left tackle through college and then in the pros, but Austin Jackson is playing better inside at guard. I still believe that the Dolphins will be better suited to bring in somebody in the tackle position and then move Eichenberg back into his natural position right there at left guard. And I don't know what's going to happen to Austin Jackson. I don't know if we want to keep him, and we're the ones that drafted him. Do we keep him as a project and see if we can develop him a little bit more? He's going to ride the bench for a while, or be a relief player there for a while. But if we can fix the offensive line, I think that we have the beginnings of a running game. We start to see the running game a little bit when you look at Duke Johnson reviving his career, Philip Lindsay being able to revive his career. Now, the numbers weren't good on Monday night from the offensive standpoint as far as total yardage. They weren't good as far as the run game, the average yards per carry. As a team, the total was 2.9 yards per carry. I expected that because the Saints defense, it's a pretty good defense. The Saints are having a lot of problems offensively. They had a lot of problems Monday night offensively. They're missing several of their offensive linemen. They were basically with their fourth string quarterback, a guy that was making his first ever start in the National Football League. He's got to come up against the Miami defense that's playing lights out right now on a Monday night football game on a national stage. This is his first start. So, there's a lot of positives, and there's a lot of positives that come out of the game. Somebody said at the end of the night that, the Dolphins still have problems on offense, because if you take away that pick six, Nick Needham in the pick six, if you take away that pick six, the Dolphins offense only scored 13 against the Saints. Well, right before the game, I believe it was Steve Young, said that he thought the game was going to be 15-13. And that was probably a good prediction. I expected both of the defenses to dominate the night, and they basically did. The Dolphins basically shut out the Saints. Okay, so they got a field goal. They didn't score a touchdown. It wasn't even really close ever, even though the score was pretty low for most of the game. But it was not a game that the Saints, I think once the Dolphins got up 10 with the 10 points, I think the Dolphins knew at that point that they could keep the pressure on them, and there was nothing that was going to happen. The Saints were not going to be able to march down the field. We basically dared them to win the game through the air. We stacked that line, and we also made sure that we knew they were going to have to start passing, and we end up with 8 sacks. I mean, it was an incredible game to watch. I would say, and I expected it, I would say it was a defensive struggle. It was a defensive game, even though the final score was 20-3. I'll agree with the guy. If you take away the pick six, the Dolphins offense only put 13 points on a very, very good Saints defense. So that said, let's take a look at some of the other statistics. I told you about Jalen Waddle. He tied a record by Jerry Rice, 10 receptions on a Monday night football game on a Monday night. Nick Needham had the interception. Brandon Jones with another interception. That stopped the Saints' a potential drive. All in all, I think if you go to the final team statistics, that shows you, I mean, when when you look at a box score, when you look at the final team statistics in games, you can tell teams that were struggling on offense. Now, the Saints' total first downs was 10. The Dolphins only had 16. So 16 first downs, yes, we beat them on that because we did beat them on the scoreboard. But when you think about that, 16 first downs is not a whole lot of first downs in a game. 20 plus, now you're talking that your offense was doing fairly good. The Dolphins, 259 total yards to 164. So our defense limited their offense to less than 200 total yards. Net yards rushing, we were pretty even there. We had 86, they had 83. The passing yards was 173 to 81. 81 passing yards for the Saints. Now everybody's going to say, well, it was Ian Book. Well, I'm sorry, but I don't even think Jameis Winston was going to have a whole lot of luck against the Dolphins defense on Monday night. There hasn't been a lot of quarterbacks in the last 7 games that have had a lot of luck against the Dolphins defense. The Dolphins defense has really turned it around in the last 7 games during this win streak, where we're talking through the first 8 weeks of the season. We were talking about what's wrong with the Dolphins defense. They were at the bottom or near the bottom in almost every single defensive category. Points given up per game, yardage per game, least number of sacks per game. All of the stats that you want to see and we expected to see the defense leading the NFL, they were at or near the bottom. And in the 7-game win streak, they are at or near the top. This has become, as we expected it to be, this has become a top 5 defense. And that, we say it all the time. Everything starts up front and defense wins championships. Because let's face it, folks, if the other team can't score, they can't win. So when the defense plays the way that they are, and I believe this is how many games, I don't have that stat in front of me. I believe this is 4 straight games that they've held their opponent under 10. That's championship defense. Now, a lot of people want to sit here and say, yeah, the Dolphins haven't played anybody. We played the Jets twice. We played Houston. We played Carolina. We played the Giants. The only really good team that we played during the 7-game win streak was the Baltimore Ravens. And, Baltimore came in and they smooth sailing. They were doing pretty good. I was scared to death of that game because it's Baltimore. I was scared to death of the Houston game because we were on a 7-game losing streak. We come in against Houston, a team that throughout their history has always had the Dolphins number, whether it was at Houston or it was at Joe Robbie Stadium or Hard Rock Stadium, whatever you want to call it. Houston was a team that had always had our number. No matter how good or bad Houston was or how good or bad the Dolphins were, Houston always found a way to beat us. So that was a scary game, especially when we're coming in at 1-7. So, there's a lot of good takeaways. This was a defensive game, if you really look at it. We punted 6 times. They punted 7 times. We ended up, we controlled the clock almost 34 minutes. So there was a lot of things to take out of there. Our offense was able to do just enough. Scored 13 points offensively. We got 7 points thanks to the defense. So I think it's a very good game for us in respect to getting the job done that we knew we needed to get done. And anytime, like I said, anytime that you can win 7 in a row in the National Football League, that's good. And we did it. We had to go into the Saints Stadium on a Monday night, on a national stage, riding a 6-game win streak and needing to win that 7th game to go from being a 1-7 team to 8-7. And by the way, we leapfrogged everybody and moved up into the 7th seed position in the AFC. So if the season was to end today, the Dolphins would have gone from 1-7 to 8-7. and made the playoffs. Talk about a run. Now, it doesn't get easy. I was going to do the playoff simulator, but I'm not going to do it. Everybody can go out and do it themselves. It's ESPN, NFL playoff machine. It's really fun to play with. You'll see all of the various scenarios. I've run the scenarios out. If we win out, we are guaranteed we are in the playoffs. We control our own destiny. Now, that means that we turn the 7-game win streak into a 9-game win streak. We've got a tough road ahead of us. This week, we go to Tennessee, where we will take on former Dolphin quarterback Ryan Tannehill. The Tannehill that I want to see is the Tannehill that we saw way too often in Miami, that holds on to the ball way too long before he makes a decision on where he's going to throw it or if he's going to throw it away, and he takes the sack. Because against our defensive line and our defensive backs and linebackers who are on fire right now, if he does that, Ryan Tannehill is going to be laying on his back about 6 times. And we're probably going to come out ahead. They're without Derrick Henry. But their defense, again, we're up against a very good defensive football team in the Tennessee Titans. So I believe that most likely this game coming up against Tennessee, go get a thimble for every one of your fingers to cover it up, or you're going to end up gnawing your fingernails off, because this is going to be a nail biter. It's going to be a very close game, unless, and this could happen either way, unless the ball just bounces the wrong way and one team just doesn't have it. Then you could have a blowout. If the Dolphins get blown out, then all of those people out there, all those naysayers are going to say, see, we all told you the Dolphins are no good. If the Dolphins blow out Tennessee, then everybody's going to be like, oh, my God, here they come into Miami the last week against the Patriots, and the Dolphins are on a roll. They're going to make the playoffs. Got a lot of bandwagoners. But the Dolphins, I'm telling you, as I've said, it is not easy to win in the National Football League, much less to rattle off 7 games in a row, 5 games in a row. So let's just be happy with what the Dolphins have done. It's incredible. I don't think any of us, I think at 1-7, 1-5, we were looking at this as a lost season. No way we're going to make the playoffs. No way we're going to win any more than 4 or 5 games total. And here we are at 8-7. And if the season ended today, the Dolphins would be the 7th seed in the AFC. So the Dolphins control their destiny. Win out, you're no worse than 7th seed. A couple of other things happen. We could be as high as, most likely, as high as potentially number 5. But one other scenario that I saw had the Bengals losing to somebody and then winning again, and a couple of problems happening with the Browns, which would knock the Steelers out totally, which I think the Steelers are going to be out of it anyway. But if the Bengals or the Browns were to somehow, I think, win the AFC North, and I think it was with the Bengals, and Buffalo just falls flat on their face and loses the next 2 games, which is impossible. They're home games against Jacksonville and the Jets. But, anything can happen. It is the National Football League. If Buffalo had the epic collapse of losing their final 2 games and things played out certain ways, I've done the playoff machine, and it would have the Dolphins not only winning the AFC East, but being as high as the number 3 seed. So there's some interesting things on the playoff machine. I'm going to, everybody go out and try it. It's fun. It's ESPN. And it's the NFL playoff machine, and it's really cool to look and see all the different outcomes of the games and what it does for the playoff chances of not only the Dolphins but every team in the National Football League that's still in the playoff hunt. Don't think that you're going to be able to do some sort of wacky type of scenario and see somebody like Jacksonville make the playoffs. They're already mathematically eliminated, so that's not going to happen. But anyway, so the Dolphins control their own destiny, win out, you're in the playoffs. A couple other things happen, you could move up, 6-5 on up. So is Buffalo going to lose 2 games? No, probably not. But if we do control our own destiny, of course, we controlled our own destiny last year. And we know what happened with that. But I like our chances. We have a good chance of beating Tennessee. We have a very good chance of beating the Patriots, especially at home, at Hard Rock Stadium, where, hey, let me tell you something. If we're riding an 8-game win streak coming into that final game against the Patriots, that stadium is going to be louder than it has been in years. And it's going to be fun, it's going to be exciting, and it's going to be a good game. So, all right, Dolphins, let's keep it rolling. My prediction for this week, I think the Dolphins, I think they're going to ride this win streak. I think they're going to make it 8 in a row. I think they're going to go to 9-7 Sunday. It's going to be a tough game, but I'm going to say that the Dolphins, I'm going to say it's going to be tied, most likely about 14 going into the later stages of the fourth quarter. The Dolphins are going to have a late drive. They're going to be able to finally get down into field goal position, and I think that the Dolphins are going to pull this out probably 17-14. That's my pick. So that's it for this week's edition of Dolphin Radio. We'll see you next week after the Titans game, hopefully with another W over there in the win column. Okay, we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening. This is Dolphin Radio.
Thanks for watching or listening. And be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. And for more great content, check us out on the web at www.dolphinradio.com.